Hello fellow Earpers and welcome back to my Wynonna Earp recap. Today we're going to talk about episode 6 of season 2, which was called Whiskey Lullaby. And we'll talk about the overall story first because I really liked it this episode. It was not as confusing as with the previous episodes and not that many things were happening at the same time. It was more like a linear way of telling a story because now they're up against the widows. The widows are not this like story sideline going on while there is a monster of the week, but the widows were kind of the monster of the week. We could argue that Hypnos was the monster of the week, but they work together, so same storyline. We've also seen a lot of interaction between the different characters. This was all connected very well, and I think till now it's actually my favorite episode. Maybe the last one was pretty good, and I liked the last one because there was a bit more gore in it and shock value, but this one was pretty nice. So we see if they can top that with the next episode, which is supposed to be a bit more fun. But we see Wynonna and Nicole drinking together. This will be interesting. Back to this episode. It starts with Moody giving dolls and dog evidence about the widows, but I do have the feeling that, like, for the viewer, this is not something very new, kind of. It's more connecting the BBD to the whole case and finally saying, yes, a widow came out of this crate in the Black Badge division. Also, the BBD is just gone. They're cutting the Ghost of a Triangle group loose, which is maybe good for them, but in overall perspective, not. And the BBD is not really a government agency, at least Moody says so. So we're going to see what comes out of that. This is going to be very interesting overall story of what does the BBD have to do with the Ghost River Triangle or not. But I think this also connects to the Purgatory case files for the people who are following it. Then a thing I really want to point out this episode is that everyone in the group gets to know that Wynonna's pregnant. Everyone a bit differently, but it's surprising for everyone except for Waverly, who has known beforehand. And we see dolls reacting, I think, the worst of all the people in the group. So he kind of hits on Wynonna. He's openly challenging Doc in his, like, maybe claim of Wynonna in Doll's eyes. And he is there for her, and he's all like hard eyes and all shimmier smiles for Wynonna. And then he finds out that she's pregnant, and he basically decides, okay, he's not gonna get involved in this. And I think this is very strange. I mean, of course he assumes that the child is Doc's. But on the other hand, just to say, okay, you know what, he says this changes everything, while Wynonna says this changes nothing. And I think this shows pretty well the difference in perspective in this moment. He's also very, like, not really protective, but almost patronizing towards her, being like, do you need to sit down? And it's fun that he asks if Wynonna needs to sit down when he's actually one who probably needs to sit down for a moment and process. Then we do have Nicole, who's actually very, very supportive, and I think the person who's like the coolest with the whole situation. She sees it, but I think as a woman she gets that this is a thing Wynonna decides about, and they're not that close that Nicole has the feeling she has anything to really say about it. More like, okay, she needs to know if Waverly knows because that's her connection into the whole like family. And she doesn't want to break Wynonna's trust. And then she's just like, okay, that's a fact, I got it. What else is there to do? And I think Wynonna's really thankful for a reaction that's not overall protective or super shocked. It's more like, okay, process the fact there are more important things to do. And with dolls, it was more like, oh, stop the whole world, something's happening. Then we had Doc. And Doc, of course, was very surprised, and I think Doc also assumes that it's his child. And he was very overwhelmed and tries to get out of the situation, but later on he writes this very nice note saying, I'm all in. So he needed time to process, which is understandable, but then he's very supportive. Also in the way he doesn't try to pressure Wynonna into talking to him. He like writes a note, gives it to Waverly, tells her, you know what, when she's ready, give it to her. And that's probably the most supportive way of communication in this moment. Then we of course have Jeremy, who kind of knew and is like, oh, okay, this is the secret, whatever. He doesn't really care, which is fun. And then we have the interaction between Wynonna and Waverly about the whole thing. Waverly, of course, already knows, but she gets very protective and kind of patronizing towards Wynonna. And Wynonna calls out on that, and Waverly recognizes that she shouldn't have been that judging, or that she shouldn't have made it about the two guys in Wynonna's life, because there's this scene where she's like, oh, you have to tell Dolls and Doc, and this like is so important also for them. And Wynonna's just like, wait, stop a second, this is my body, I make the decision to tell whomever I want to or not. And this like has Waverly taking a step back for very good reason. And I like that we learn kind of these like core feminist issues with the characters, so it's not like a lecture we get from the series telling us this is how it has to be, but we see the characters making mistakes and learning from them, and that has been the thing through the whole series, which I really, really like. Then we have the interaction between Waverly and Nicole, and in the beginning we kind of see that Waverly is scared of really talking to Nicole because of the whole googly thing going on, but then in the end they make up. They're like the perfect romantic couple. Even Wynonna calls them out on it, which is very fun, and that kind of leaves them in a good place, because we see again honest consent, communication, all the basic things that should be there in a functional relationship. Yay! We also have more Wynonna and Nicole interaction in this episode. And it starts with the whole scene in the station where I have the feeling that Nicole really doesn't know what to do with Wynonna, and is very glad that Waverly comes into the station. It's just like, can you take care of Wynonna, because this is awkward. And I have the feeling later on it comes to this moment where Wynonna wakes Nicole up, and Nicole's like, oh, Waverly's in trouble. And Wynonna is, yes, but I have to send you somewhere else. And Nicole's like, okay, trust you enough to save her, and I will go and do what you say I should do, because I trust you enough in this kind of mission, which is very cool as like a camaraderie friendship thing going on between them. Jeremy, let's talk about Jeremy. Jeremy clearly has the potential to save the day this episode and fails multiple times, but well, he's new to the Earp squad. There will be his moment. He knew where the seal was. He wanted to tell everyone just vanished. Then he went there to go and get it. Then he was not strong enough to lift the crates and fell asleep like everyone else. And then there's this like very fun moment where he kind of wakes up. He tries to sneak up on the widows, and then he stumbles, and then there's a noise, and then he gets frozen. But hey, at least he tried. Also, I really like the moment where he tries to explain that he can develop an algorithm to find out where the seals are, and then he kind of has to take a step back and talk in a way normal people talk, so they understand his nerd speak. But I think he's getting better with like everyone. He's also the only one who realizes that since Black Badge Division is gone, who's going to pay them? Like, something I always ask myself in these TV series, how do people get money for like food they have to buy? Even whiskey costs something. Wynonna should know that. Then we have my, let's say, favorite humor parts in the whole episode. One of them is when they all fall asleep and Wynonna wakes up first with Peacemaker. The first thing she thinks about is like, oh, I need a bigger coat. And before she wakes anyone, she gets a different coat. Then we also have her in the beginning of the episode calling dolls like, what was it? tiny super sexy dragon, which was hilarious. And then the comment of, oh God, really is dead, when the nun comes in with the bloody hands and says her boss is dead, which was very fun. And Wynonna gives Jeremy the nickname Algebra, which I think is a genius nickname. I would have wanted that, like, in my young years, as someone who loved maths. This would have been a very, very nice nickname. Talking about the bad guys a bit, we do have Tucker, who's like the maximum creep. He's really, really creepy. He's clearly someone who intended rape in the episode. I'm really glad that we didn't have to see it, like that we learned through words what he was about to do, but I don't need the visuals for that, and everyone got that he's like a very violent man anyway. But as he himself pointed out, he's not stupid. He's super creepy, but he's not stupid. And then he actually somehow, in all the time when the widows search for the seal, he finds Constance Clutie, and we're all like, yay, the Stone Witch! She's not dead, she might be coming back. Well, her head comes back, the rest stays buried. That's unfortunate, and I wanted to see her again, but we can't have every villain we want to. We just have to deal with Constance Clutie being headless right now. Then the whole thing about the widows. The widows are very interesting creatures because they can go on consecrated ground, different from Michin, the goo demon who couldn't, and they showed out of the middle of nowhere, out of like the box and black badge. They clearly have these rings that contain some kind of spell or magic, and they use it for searching for the seals. They also call Constance like a sister, which could mean they all worship the same god, demon, whatever, or they're all widows of the same husbandman entity. I mean, sometimes nuns say they're married to God, so this could be a thing, but maybe not with God, but a different entity. And they're still searching for the third seal, so we're gonna see a bit more of them in the next episodes. And I'm really looking forward to these next episodes, because I've been riddling with a few other people quite a lot about who these widows are, who they could be, what their magic entails, and I really, really want to find out. I'm not sure if they're gonna stay until like the very last moment as the big bad. I don't think so. Probably the thing they get out of the seal might be the big bad, but this might even be too obvious. If we think of season 1, kind of Willa became the big bad connected with Bobo, and we just thought it would be Bobo. So whatever, we'll see what happens. I'm very, very excited for the next episodes, also because there's gonna be a Wynonna and Nicole road trip, probably, and we'll see what that entails. We haven't had that many scenes between them, or just under the influence of weird goo, so we can't really judge where they stand at the moment, and I'm looking forward to that. And with that note, we see each other next week after episode 207.